There's the music playing once again. And if you're hearing it, you have arrived. Whether you have a story to tell or an encounter you cannot explain, you've come to the right network. This is the Rope and Radio Network, broadcasting from the heart of Oregon, in Salem at the capital. Welcome in, my fellow Oregonians. It's a follow-up to our latest conversation with Katy Elizabeth. I have some additional questions, and I thought it might be fun just to go ahead and do a podcast. We're going to be submitting all of our pods through Anchor, so you can listen in there. But it's good to have people in person as well. That's why we have the other channels through social media. I really do appreciate everybody who is commenting and subscribing on social media. And every once in a while I get some comments that I love reading from everyone. So it's important to hear from you guys. So keep them coming. I really do enjoy them. This isn't about me. This whole field is bigger than me. I have seen a lot of strife. One person will say they'll get angry at the fact that somebody else discovered it before them, which is unfortunate. The most important thing is that we find out what's going on. I don't have to be right all the time, but I have to care about getting it right. That's important. We have a follow-up call here with Katy. I'd like to ask her some more additional questions. We were discussing Champ, the lake monster. Probably not the right term for this creature. More like the Mesozoic creature. Let's give her a call right now and see if she can clarify some things for us.
Hello.
Hello, Katy. This is Jacob.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. I'm glad you got a little bit of time to chat for just a tiny bit. Hope I'm not taking you away from too much.
Not a problem. It's okay. Oh, God. When it rains, it pours. It has so much crap going on.
Hear, hear.
Holy shit. And I swear a lot sometimes, so bear with me. I try not to, but when you're getting frustrated, it happens.
No, it's understandable. So some things came up that I was curious to get some of your feedback on. And it's funny this is one of the few times when I put out a video, you get a lot of people responding. I've had a lot of emails coming through, and I mean a lot in the last 48 hours. So people started viewing the video, and I had a lot of great feedback about people saying, hey, these are great. We should have Katy get you on the water. We should be doing some filming on the water. And I agree. It's nice to be able to have someone that you can go to and say, hey, let's do a little work together. Of course, you're the person familiar with being out there, so it's important. Let's start with Dennis Hall. Is he still doing the research?
He really isn't. He's kind of, when I met him back in 2014, I actually met him before 2014. I met him in, it was 2013 when I was working with Elizabeth Muggenthaler at the time, who recorded the first echolocation recordings in the lake. I had followed Dennis since I was a little kid and followed his Champ Quest website, and I finally got to meet him in 2013. And then after a while, I said to him, I think it's really time for you to get back out on the lake, because he had so much insight and so much experience in doing field research. Mm-hmm. So I did convince him to come out on the lake. It was like pulling teeth, basically. So I just saw a lot of potential with him. And there was a lot of things that he had taught me about different sighting locations, certain times, and that sort of thing. And he really did believe that there was a habitual pattern with these animals, just like many animals in the animal kingdom as far as feeding habits and so forth. So, he joined my group and we would go out on the lake, and that's when in 2014 I captured the video of a champ animal crossing Button Bay. Yeah. And then we also got the recording at an area of the lake called Scotch Bonnet, where he captured a video in 1985. The video is not the greatest thing in the world because technology at that time was not good. Yep. So that's when we, joined forces, got together, and started doing a lot of the research on the lake. And then it got to the point where he just kind of started to lose interest again.
Okay.
And I would, go and say to him, like, let's go out on the lake. We got to do more recordings. And it was mainly me,
Okay.
It was really hard to get him out there and motivated.
Really? So I brought up in the last conversation we had that he had really, really amazing, not photos, but potential proof that these are long neck creatures. Some of the images I saw. Have you seen those?
I actually have quite a few files on my hard drive that he had given me to post. I did post a couple of videos on YouTube. One of the videos that I find extremely fascinating was when Elizabeth von Muggenthaler was up here in 2009, I believe it was. And she was working for the Discovery Channel, America's Loch Ness Monster, which that title's been used many times.
Yeah.
So she was out in the boat. He didn't know her at the time, but he got wind of, I believe he was on that episode. And, that one particular episode I did not see yet, it's really hard to find.
Okay.
So that's going to be in my little digging around to try to find it. But he had found out that she was going to be on the lake, and, they kind of talked on email, and I actually have some of the emails, and one of them is in my new book, between them, where she had said, hey, I want to come up, and what do you think? Do you think that these animals communicate by sound? And he said, absolutely, because I noticed, like, one would come up and another would come up, and, two. Usually it pairs is when, they've been seen, which can basically make people think that they're seeing a 100-foot-long monster because of two animals right behind each other.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So he said, I really do think that they communicate with sound somehow. And that really enticed her to come up and, work for the Discovery Channel. Mm-hmm. So he was out filming on Button Day. I think it was like 9:30 in the morning. And he looked out and he saw this huge boat. And he's like, gee, that must be, it wasn't like a boat that you see every day. He's like, that must be the boat that she's on for the Discovery Channel. And they came around the point, and all of a sudden you see like two black humps rise to the surface. And you can see them when they start to speed up, they start doing the typical vertical undulation. And I mean, even though the video wasn't that great at the time, but you can tell it's not sturgeon. The sturgeon do not move in a vertical undulation.
Well, let me chime in on this one for just a moment here. So when Dennis had seen the creature and he saw the back of this thing, I'm guessing he was able to distinguish between shell and skin, correct?
What I want to make clear too is that Liz and her crew that were in the boat, which was the Casablanca, the guy down at Point Bay Marina owns that, Al Martin. I don't even know if Al's still alive or not, but they did not see anything because they were in the cabin. But Dennis got the video of these animals diagonally in front of the boat. And it was amazing because at that same time is when Liz recorded the echolocation. Okay. So we have a visual that ties into the audio that she got as well, which is extremely important. I mean, that to me, that's probably my favorite video because it totally correlated what she was getting for sound in Button Bay. Because if you watch the Monster Quest episode with her, and she talks about some of the locations where she had gotten echolocation, Button Bay was one of them. Also Hunter Bay up near Thompson's Point, and those correlate with some of the areas that I've gotten echolocation as well. Okay.
So being Elizabeth, she knows what echolocation is. She's worked with it to understand what it truly is and how it works and how animals use it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that actually would help. See, I'm getting some feedback from people who would say that there's no echolocation in this lake.
Well, my question is, have they ever gone out there and actually done hydrophone recordings, and do they actually know what they're talking about? Right. I do so many recordings, and I work with whales and dolphins down in the Florida Keys. I've done a lot of independent studies of whales, cetaceans, and I also record a lot of the fish species in Lake Champlain, sturgeon. I've got many sounds of sturgeon, and some of my videos that I've done, I've pieced together, actually show the difference between the sounds of sturgeon that are in the lake, the sounds of freshwater drum. That was one that somebody had mentioned, but freshwater drum have a really deep croaking type of sound, which is not indicative of echolocation. You don't have that clicking. And what's really important, too, is that another theory that people had said with Liz von Muggenthaler's recordings, which is pretty damn similar to what I have, is that, maybe it's a fish finder. Well, I've got recordings of a fish finder, and it's a constant tick, like a clock.
Okay.
It's basically mechanical. And any variation that goes up and down, and you've got that click, 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 that's not something that is man-made.
Okay.
That is not something that's man-made. So I have, like, various sounds that I've done videos where I've compared them, and also with the known fish species here in the lake. And I've done recordings all over the place, various lakes around the United States and also out in the ocean. And I recorded whales and dolphins out in the ocean, and I've never gotten anything that is particularly the same. The closest I've ever gotten was the beluga whale study that I did at Mystic Aquarium with that deep purring type of sound. And matter of fact, I did a program for the Travel Channel, and it was Paranormal Declassified. And we had gotten a recording, which is the same exact sound that I had gotten a couple of times. And they had someone analyze it, a professional, with whales and dolphins. And matter of fact, she specialized in beluga whale. And she said, wow, this is amazing. She was totally amazed. And I can get her name for you. I would like to speak to her as well, and I have not got a chance to. But, all of my evidence that I've gathered over the years has been analyzed and proven authentic. So it's not like I'm jumping to conclusions.
Right.
I've had it all analyzed by professionals and in their type of field. But if we're dealing with something that is not in our known fossil record, who's the expert?
Right.
Nobody's an expert.
Yeah.
If it doesn't compare to what we have today, it's baffling. And nobody's an expert at that.
Yeah, and like you said, you've been on the lake. The question would be for these people, have you been on the lake too? Have you actually been there to study like Katy has been doing? So I think that's good to clarify. Let's get into the next thing here, which is it began with the Peter Baudet footage of what is presumed to be, which a lot of people do believe this, is a very large, long-necked turtle. So we get into a class here that raises some questions. Now, when I look at the information, I had some people send me some good stuff on this, and I really am grateful for them forwarding me this. I'm not trying to say that, hey, it's not a turtle. I really want it to be a dinosaur. Well, hell, I would love for it to be a dinosaur. But I'm willing to look at the other side of it, too, to understand.
Yeah.
The thing is, have you ever seen a turtle move fast on land, especially a large one? There's loopholes here.
I've seen, you'd be surprised. I have seen smaller turtles, sun turtles, and they're sitting on a log, and then, you just happen to show up, and they run pretty fast. You would be surprised. I have to say about the turtle theory, I'm not dead against it. I actually think it's more plausible than the plesiosaur theory.
Okay,
I really do.
Why not a plesiosaur?
Well, basically, plesiosaurs were mainly air breathers, and they had very large fins. And with my sonar image that I had captured, and particularly the first one, you can actually see the appendages that have, it looks like claws, almost like a Komodo dragon or even an alligator where they have like a webbed claw foot.
Mm-hmm.
And I got looking at that, and I'm like, am I just like seeing this? But all the reports that I gathered of these animals in the marsh systems, and they're running across land at a great speed.
Yeah.
Something with big, giant flippers like the plesiosaur, I don't think they would be able to do that. I mean, I know seals and very large sea turtles can actually move pretty good if they want to, but nothing to that, that access. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Plus the prints that have been found as well, which indicate four-toed footprints. I have found some strange prints out in the marsh. I never said to anybody that they were definitely champs. But if they were a beaver, which they do have webbed feet, it was a very large one. So there's some weird stuff. But I'm the type of person that I'm very analytical. I have my head on my shoulders where I am the most logical that I can be, and I try to use science to the best of my ability to, show my research, doing the water temperature readings, different times when these animals are sighted, different locations, what type of fish are in those areas, because obviously that's a large staple in their diet. And why are they going into the marsh systems at nighttime, in my opinion, is to feed, because it's shallow. There's a lot of different little tiny fish there. There's vegetation, and they could be opportunistic feeders. Alligators have been found with vegetation in their stomach when they're dissected by scientists, which is really, really weird. And that's something that I had found in my studies as well. And a lot of that I put in my new book, Water Horse of Lake Champlain Research. So there's a lot of different ideas, and I try to keep my thoughts and my ideas outside the box. I take all of the reports. I take what I've seen myself, logging the times, the locations, seeing the different videos that people have sent me, including my own that I've captured. And I try to fit them together like a big puzzle. And that's the best that we can do to form an identikit to say, okay, these animals have these traits, and okay, this is really strange because like these prints are the same type of thing, the same type of foot that we're seeing on this sonar image. So I'm doing the best I can to fit everything together and to be as scientific and as logical as possible.
I understand. Yeah. And that makes sense. That really does. Because it's like I said too. I said, I don't believe it to be a plesiosaur either, or an elasmosaurus. I know there's some slight different characteristics with the two, maybe a longer neck.
Yeah.
But is the other comment I had that came up too was when I mentioned that whether or not plesiosaurs or maybe Tanystropheus, because they may lay their eggs on land. Well, actually, I had a little bit more clarification, which I appreciate. They mentioned that a plesiosaur or a tanny may be like a mammal, where they have their babies just like an orca whale or a whale in general.
Yeah.
I don't know that about the tanny. I'm not sure about the tanny, but definitely a plesiosaur. Yeah. I think it was before in the past, they actually thought they did lay eggs on land, and that's where I believed I came up with that. But I guess new research shows that they actually are like mammals, where they have their offspring in the water.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about that in my book too, where a lot of the older theories were, that they laid eggs on shore, just like, the common day snapping turtle.
Yeah.
But it's known now by the fossil record that Tanystropheus, as well as the plesiosaurs, they found fossils with an embryo inside, basically they give live birth, but inside they're in a sac, very much like a mammal would be born. So they gave live birth, which is really interesting. And, I honestly believe that they give live birth. You would think if they were laying eggs somewhere, somebody would have found something, but you never know. It's kind of weird, but I believe that they give live birth.
Yeah.
And another really interesting thing too is that Komodo Dragon, which I believe, like with the sonar images and all the reports of the prints and all that, Champ looks very much like a Komodo or a Asian water monitor lizard. But yet they have the longer neck, which looks like a plesiosaur.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is that they have had captive Komodo dragons at the zoo, and the females are basically, they're asexual, so they don't need a mate. It's called parthenogenesis, so they can actually produce babies without a male present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As I think about this a little bit more, we know this to be fact, kind of like a mammal. There are characteristics of a mammal when they have their offspring in the water. Now, could that mean they can communicate like a mammal? Now, we brought this up. You brought up that they potentially have the ability to mimic a beluga whale, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And this also would serve up the echolocation. Okay. Unless you were on the lake, unless you did the study yourself, you wouldn't know. You would just come to assumptions. I think a lot of us do make assumptions unless we're there in person to understand.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people have come forward and have done other work beside yourselves. Now, I think you probably are familiar with the late Scott Martis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew Scott very well.
Okay, good.
We worked together a couple times. His main favorite thing was the Plesiosaur.
Yeah.
And, like we had our difference in opinions and stuff. And, he would say, oh, it's a Plesiosaur, that's it. And I'm like, Scott, you have to understand too, like evolutionary adaptation is at play all the time with species. Just because something looks like a Plesiosaur, it's like basically you see, say back in the day, you see a fox out in your yard. And someone else is going to say, okay, that's a coyote. We're going to identify that because it's a canine. So, although they look similar, that doesn't mean it's necessarily the same exact species. They could be, saying it's an ancient reptile. You have the Plesiosaur, you have the Tanystropheus. They were both ancient reptiles, but they weren't the same exact thing. So, using that for an example, it's evolutionary adaptation comes into play all the time. And as time goes on, animals are adapting to their environment. They could have developed a longer neck, and the long neck is made for ambush predating, trying to get fish. And it's like looking at a soft-shelled turtle. And I remember watching Jeremy Wade, one of his episodes. I think he was in, I might be wrong, don't quote me on this, I think he was in Asia somewhere. And he had this big, huge soft-shelled turtle. And it came up and it lunged at him, and it looked like it had a short neck. And all of a sudden it lunged at him, and the neck was huge, and like he was really surprised. So, I mean, they are developing these different morphology differences to the areas that they're, developing in. The echolocation, probably because at one point, especially during the 1800s, Lake Champlain was highly polluted because there was tons of tanneries around the lake, and they were letting all the nasty stuff get in the lake, and the water was not that clear. Yeah. So, these animals developed that echolocation for a reason, and it could be because of that. They couldn't really see that well, and navigational terms. And, nature has a way. And for these animals to survive a millennia, they have to be extremely resilient to survive that long. And, there's times in the wintertime where the lake can completely freeze over. Yeah. And, during, I would say, November to April, the sightings goes just plummet down. Like, you don't see anything. You don't really hear anything in the winter. I've heard of a couple strange sightings in the winter up on the ice. Yeah. Which is really interesting. But snapping turtles can come out of their torpor a little bit, and I've got a picture in my book of a snapping turtle on the ice walking around, which is something that scientists thought that they could never do.
Yeah, exactly. Now, a snapping turtle, would you be considered carnivorous?
Yeah.
When people are sighting this thing on land and the way it moves, especially, I can't remember the lady who saw them as it came underneath the light. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, that was my friend, Christine Hebert.
Okay. Oh, she would be a great one to talk to. But her sighting is amazing. Lovely. Yeah. And she saw two of them.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about this too. And the big question is, how quickly did it move? And then, did she see a back that may have looked like a turtle shell? That would be an indication, a clear indication. Yeah. So you can't dismiss, and I've said this to other people too. I'm like, look, when you're an investigator, you have to consider the eyewitness, because you cannot solve this whole puzzle without these pieces. They're important. Science is about observation as well. So in this case, eyewitnesses are your observation. So you can't exclude them. They're important. So for her, she saw this thing. So we look at the people who have seen it on land, and they're like, okay, look, this is what I saw. Like Dennis. Dennis is adamant that it's a tanny, because he saw, I remember that program where he was talking about it moving. He's like, that's the closest thing I can describe to what Champ is, a tanny. So the theory I have is that there are different kinds of creatures in this lake. But I tend to lean more towards this, because like you said, it seems to be the only thing that fits. And the turtle thing is a great idea. I think it's a great theory, and it may be real. Yeah, it definitely could be. I mean, long-necked turtles are out there. This is a big long-necked turtle. Like you said, 15, 20 feet. This is big.
Yeah.
But the key that you mentioned here is that when you saw one of these, and correct me if I'm wrong, it had a neck that looped. Like it could be like serpentine, could wrap around something, which might be a defense of an Elasmosaurus or Plesiosaur, how they move to attack or something like that, snake-like. The fact that it was looping like that, it's like, gosh, can a long-necked turtle really do that if it possesses that?
What's amazing, I've actually never seen that ability in a long-necked turtle.
Okay. Yeah.
What's really interesting too, is with the sonar, in one of the sonar images that I got, the one in particular on the bottom, there was two. And there was two that the next time that I got them, and they were about 35 feet down from the surface, further up the lake, just a little bit. And what was really interesting about it was the one on the bottom that you could actually make out pretty clear. That one, you can see where it's like kind of pulling back, and you can see these like coils in the neck. It's like a piston. Yep. And that's an ambush predator for sure. I mean, that's what the soft-shell turtles and even also the common snapping turtle that's here in this region, they can do the same type of thing where they can pull back. And that's just something that, I mean, plesiosaurs didn't really have that ability to wrap their head around, their head and neck around things or anything like that. They didn't have the correct vertebrae to do that. But the Tanystropheus actually had like these side ribs, just very much like a snake.
Yep.
And I don't believe, here's my theory, like this is where Dennis and I would get into little conundrums about our theory. I don't think necessarily that they're a Tanystropheus.
Right.
And I got like one reason. The neck is not quite as long, number one. It's almost as long. The midsection of that particular animal that I got on the sonar was very, very long. And it's weird because it's like, if it's a Tanystropheus, it's evolved into having a longer midsection. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The evolutionary adaptation, I believe, if it is a Tanystropheus, catalog.
Adaptation, yes.
Yeah, like the midsection is a lot longer, and they are shaped basically like they're streamlined, and that's why they can swim so fast. Because at the time when I got the first sonar, I was going about 45, and we were getting back to the dock, like I had said before, and I was trying to get back to the dock because we were running out of freaking gas. And I'm like, oh my god! So I'm throttling this thing, and then Frank says to me, "What the hell's that on the bottom?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe it's a couple of logs." But I took a snapshot of it because it was interesting. And then when I enlarged it, I was like, "Oh my god!" Because I had the sighting across the lake in the same spot of that same jawline that I was seeing in the picture. So it's not like pareidoidal, like I was just seeing something. It's like seeing Jesus in a piece of toast. I wasn't seeing that. Yeah. I'm so analytical, and I mean, I've got videos that are on my hard drive that I never shared, and I grew up on the water when I was a kid.
Yeah. And
I know for a fact there's some videos that I've captured are of these animals, but they're not good enough for me to put out there and really,
I see.
That's how,
I understand.
That's how picky I am. You know what I mean?
It makes sense.
When people doubt that there's something here, it doesn't bother me because I know what I've seen. I know what I've recorded.
Yep.
And it's really gratifying that I'm that blessed to have gotten those things. And it's because you've got to spend the time and you have to have a heart and a passion for it. It's like people think you're going to go to Loch Ness and see it like the first day. I saw a funny joke online the other day. This guy went to Loch Ness and put a 1-star review. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so disappointed. I didn't see anything. We were there for 2 hours and we went home." And I was so
oh gosh.
But honestly, in true fact, that is the mentality of people.
Yep.
When they don't see something within a couple of hours. And I don't mind people that come up to me and are really skeptical skeptic. I don't mind. I actually really
Makes it more
enjoy.
fun.
Yeah, it does, and I enjoy people picking my brain and asking me really good questions. And I'm really honored that we're having this conversation because I really enjoy, someone picking my brain because it keeps me sharp. It keeps me thinking of new ideas because, everybody that works together on this phenomenon, it helps. We help each other, and that's what it's all about because we all want the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, real quick, two more things. One, you mentioned that if it was a turtle, we were bound to find a shell. Would we find it floating to the surface? Will we find it on land? How would it hold up? Over time? Would they lose a shell underwater?
Well, it depends on where they basically demise, where they die. And one thing that I've mentioned to people too, and Dennis would agree with this on me, is that in the marsh systems, there's so much mud and stuff, and sometimes turtles, and even Scott would agree on this.
Yeah.
And he actually talked about it before on one of his podcasts with me, but some sea turtles, for example, they'll go into caves to die because they know that they're dying.
Yeah.
It's like animals. It's like I had a friend of mine that had a cat that was like 16 years old, and this is just going by the animal kingdom, but the cat disappeared, and he found the cat down the hill from his house, and she was burying herself because she was dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like animals just know when their time is up. So there honestly could be like 50 or something in my friend's swamp that are buried in the mud and we'll never find them. I mean, there's turtles that do the same thing. As far as like the shell popping up somewhere, I don't think that they would float, but you would think, somebody would find something with a shell. I mean, that's just my opinion. And the other thing is, watching, the video that I presented 2014, Sandra Mancy's photo, 1977, the sonar images that I've gotten, you don't see a carpus, which is a shell. So it's kind of weird, I mean, I'm not ruling it out, but anybody that's ever seen Champ on land has never said to me that there was a shell.
Okay.
And also that's lining it up with sonar images that I've gotten and stuff like that in the videos and all that. So it's like, if you have one thing, somebody's theory, but you've got all these eyewitnesses and all these videos to take into consideration, and you've got maybe 5 or 10% of the population who's never been to the lake, and they're saying, oh, they're a long-necked turtle, and they have a shell. And then you got the people that have actually seen these animals or gotten photographic or video evidence, and they're saying that there is no shell. I mean, what are you going to believe?
Yeah,
I mean,
you bring up, you nailed it. I was going to ask that one too, because we're looking at theory versus eyewitness accounts, and they're saying no shell. And this is where I don't mean any disrespect to those who, this is a strong theory, no doubt about it. I think it's a good possibility. But for me, it seems like we're always trying to debunk dinosaurs. I know this is not a dinosaur. Okay, I know it is, but I'm helping to communicate what it is. Just like when I say pterosaurs, people say pterodactyls. Pterodactyl is not the right word. It's pterosaur. So when you hear that Mesozoic creatures, for instance, people look to debunk that very quickly because they're supposed to be extinct. Really? No, I'm not buying it. Something's going on in our world, just like with these other creatures around the world that people are seeing. Something's not right. Which brings me to my last question that I'll have recorded. Last question is, Katy, what's another cryptid that you're crazy about besides Champ?
Besides Champ. Okay, so besides water creatures, because I'm like the water creature nut.
I know.
I would say probably the skunk ape. I go down to Florida every month, and I've been dabbling in some skunk ape research, and I have a friend of mine, Dave Shealy, that owns the skunk ape research headquarters.
Yeah, great place.
And I never really get to really work with Dave. We've been out to dinner and stuff. Like, we all kind of go out to dinner and stuff, and No, I mean, he's extremely knowledgeable about skunk ape. And
Yeah,
a lot of people, there was a program on a while back, and they had said, oh, it's some guy in a monkey suit. And I'm like, if they only knew, here's the problem, okay? That swamp in the Everglades, I know exactly where that video was taken. Now, I mean, yeah, to the normal person, like, oh, yeah, somebody dressed up in a freaking Bigfoot suit, a monkey suit, whatever. Even if you took a professional athlete, and you put them in that swamp in a monkey suit, okay? The problem is you're talking 15, 18 inches of water in that swamp. On the program, they never talked about that because they had never been there.
Yeah.
They've never been there. I've seen the Everglades. I've been in the Everglades, and in that location, the water is quite deep. You just see grass. So everybody thinks solid ground with grass. There's no way, in my opinion, that someone in a suit, humanly possible, could run like that through water.
Yeah.
No way.
No.
And when the important thing about Dave is when you sit with him and you actually meet him in person, he freaks you out because he looks you right in the eyes.
Good.
The guy is so honest, and like he starts tearing up. And that's like with me, if I tell people about my head and neck sighting, which I don't like telling people about it because I didn't get it on a video, and a lot of people are going to say she's full of crap. But if you talk to me in person and you sit with me, I start shaking and I start crying because it's something that is in your mind and in your heart forever.
Yep.
And that's what's important, you know? And so the skunk ape to me is probably, as far as, other than the water creatures, because they're my favorite, but I would say the skunk ape is probably my favorite cryptid. And then the Jersey Devil is another strange one that I would love to investigate at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I was curious by that. So were a bunch of other people. So I like hearing the other interests that people have. Well, Katy, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your support and stuff and your friendship, and we'll keep in touch, okay? And let me know when you're free again. We'll talk again.
I will. Thank you so much.
Have a great night. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
So that was Katy. Got some more information from her. Again, we have an individual who's on the lake, who spends time on the lake, lots of time on the lake. We have eyewitnesses who have seen something, long neck, body, tail, feet. But they're not reporting a shell. So that's our problem here. Now, again, I like the turtle idea. I think it's probably the most logical. But coming from my viewpoint, these creatures have been here for thousands of years. I'm not going to say millions because I don't accept evolution. All this is linked here. 6,000 years ago, a flood. Creatures here have been here since the beginning of time. You don't need to take aquatic creatures on the ark. They're in the water, for crying out loud. I think you know where I'm going with this. Anyway. So we will need to keep a close eye on her future endeavors in the years to come. Now, if you're fascinated by this topic like I am, I do have a gentleman coming forward who has lived in the Okanagan Valley for quite some time and has had 4 accounts with the Ogopogo. That's coming. So stay tuned for that. Let's go back to the Mansi photo for just a moment. We have a long neck and a back. Now, this is where the turtle theory plays an important role. The Tanystropheus, the back isn't quite the same. We have a larger back in this photo. Some would say that's a shell. I'm going to say that's skin, that it's not a shell, that it's just the back. If Dennis saw a tanny, and if Scott believed that the creature out there is a plesiosaur, and if I believe in the turtle theory, and if I believe in the Tanny concept, this picture with the Mansi photo kind of clarifies something, doesn't it? It kind of narrows down the others. Do Tanystrophiuses have large backs like this? But like I said, there are different variations in this lake. At least that's what I'm going to hold to until something else surfaces. Could be a plesiosaur, although Katy makes some good fine points, but also keep in mind too that kind of determines these creatures really, in my personal opinion, do not evolve, but they adapt. Adaptation sets in. So I don't believe they're evolving. I believe they've always been there. But again, different variations of creatures in this lake. So that'll end our podcast for the time being, but we got some great shows coming, so stay tuned. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you. But most importantly, seek the truth. May God bless every one of you on the other side of this screen. I'm your host, Jacob Guerra. We will see you next time on the RRN Cryptozoological Network.